Thank you very much, Maciej. Hello, everyone. So, just to elaborate a little bit more on that. So, hello, my name is Karel Kohout. I am part of Accenture. I lead application and cloud security in EMEA. And I'm here joined by a good colleague, Joe Hegarty from WIS. Joe leads the global partnership with Accenture. And fun fact, Joe actually worked with Accenture for longer than I am in Accenture. So he knows more about the company than I do. And today, what we want to talk about is CNAP. So I first want to check, who knows what CNAP means? What does it stand for? Thank you. One. Perfect. Okay. So the abbreviation as such stands for Cloud Native Application Protection Platform. Quite a mouthful. But what it actually means is that it is about a platform that secures cloud, but not in point in time and not as in let's look at where vulnerability is or vulnerabilities are. It deals with the whole life cycle from let's prevent the vulnerabilities from even getting into production to let's detect if there is something going on, up to how do we respond to an event that may be a sign of compromise or a threat. Perfect. So now that we've established what a CNAP is, what we want to talk about and what I would like to ask you, you probably heard today a lot of inspiring presentations talking about AI or development, engineering, and you probably, same as me and same as everyone else, got excited about that. And you're thinking, oh, this is great, I want to build it, I want to play with it, I want to apply it in my job. So another question for you, raise your hands where you had such inspiration and you thought about the security aspect of that. One. Wow. Security literate crowd. Perfect. Love it. So this is exactly the challenge. We live in a time where AI is changing quite a lot. And it's not only AI, it is engineering and a lot of new frameworks and so on. And you have the constant challenge of engineers, technology enthusiasts, working with that, applying that, or even business, putting pressure on them to get those business functionalities in production as fast as possible, where security tends to be a little bit an afterthought. And what we want to talk about today is how do we turn that a little bit around. So before we get there, one thing that, with what I just described, one thing that is one of the challenges that companies typically face is it's not only about how do we enable the engineers, the AI enthusiasts and so on, it's about how do we do this strategically. How do we put in the right framework, the right people, the right technology, the right culture. And it goes without saying that, and you've probably heard this many times, security professionals, such as myself, such as some of you in the audience, we are outnumbered when we talk about engineers in the companies, the people who really want to put the business functionality, all the agents or all the new frameworks in front of customers, generating revenue for the companies, right? So we are outnumbered. The numbers differ depending on who you ask. 1 to 100, 1 to 1,000, doesn't matter. We are outnumbered. And there's not enough workforce on the market. Of course, you can argue, well, but augment it with Gen AI, we can help it. Of course we can. But still, there is quite a bit of a challenge. But again, you know, the only way how to battle AI is with AI. Is to adopt AI, use AI for security as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Perfect. One more thing that this was actually published in Accenture's State of Cyber in 2025, and we talk about, or you've probably heard our CEO talking a lot about reinvention. In security, in cybersecurity, we've taken it to and then defined the reinvention-ready zone. What does it mean? This means that companies have the right frameworks, the right processes, the right strategy, and are thinking about security. I would even go as far as argue, if you do not have security, you are not ready to reinvent your business, to move your business to the digital era. Because frankly, if you do that, you can do that. You can get and you can have great things in production. You can have great AI agents or any other technology in production. But there's a lot of risks that without the right security framework, right strategy, right processes, right approach, it is something that potentially can get stopped by a cyber attack. It is something that can get compromised, and it opens up the company to a lot of risks. And frankly, not that many companies today are in that zone ready for this. But what we want to talk to you about is how do we help companies to get there. And before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about assessment. So this is taking a little bit step back, but to set up that framework that I talked about, you need to understand where you are. And how do you do that? You do an assessment. Whether you do it internally, whether you get a external party to do that, doesn't matter. It's like the analogy. If you look at the Google Maps and want to plan a path, how do you want to get to that ready zone? You need to know where you're starting from. Otherwise, you can't plan the path, right? So having or doing that assessment and understanding where you are is the starting point. However, I should do it. Okay. So, however, a lot of the assessments have a challenge that they are not really actionable. And what we want to talk about today is how do we make them actionable? How do we make them tangible and data-driven? So it gives the companies, the decision makers enough to actually be able to plan that path very confidently and based on data and real insights from technology, from environment, rather than something that is more human driven. So before we get there, what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted to mention is the way how, and Accenture, same as other companies, we've done a lot of assessments for our customers. The way how these assessments work typically is through interviews, through talking with people and asking them questions about how do you do this, where is it documented, what do you do if this happens, and so on. The key word here is people. It is a human input. So, and there comes also into picture something on the side, more not really linked to security or technology. It is about conversation with humans, and we can't take the human aspect, the emotion out of it. What I mean by this is that, for example, you speak with people who are running, let's say, vulnerability management process. You ask them, what do you do? How do you do this? How do you execute? What do you do when you find vulnerability? And what happens is that person may feel threatened, may feel that, these people are asking me if I'm doing my job right. So naturally, the response is a little bit biased by the emotion. We people always react like that. So we're talking about a human intelligence, human output, which is always subjective, prone to error, prone to interpretation. And you may argue that, okay, but we can use Gen AI to do the questions. We can use Gen AI to even point Gen AI at the documentation and do the assessment for us. A little bit quicker maybe, and we will take the human element out of it. I would argue not exactly, because that documentation was still written by humans, possibly. May not be accurate. We all know that AI the key thing for AI to work is data. If you feed it data that's not accurate, you won't get accurate results, right? The same if you do it as a questionnaire. You just replace the interviewer by Gen AI, but still you are asking a human that can have that human emotion in that. So what we're saying is that when you do an assessment, and you can see on the screen like how the assessment process works and the steps, then you have that human intelligence aspect in the equation. And of course, one other thing is that you go through this, you evaluate all the input as you know, with the challenges that I just described, and you get a report at the end. One more question that I have for the audience. What do you think in a lot of cases happens with the report that someone has and looks at or is given and says, this is where we are maturity-wise? Any thoughts? Perfect, yeah. In a lot of cases, it is something that gets put in a drawer or worse and never looked at again. One reason why this is that it's simply not actionable, it's not data-driven, it's not tangible. So with that, I'll hand over to my good colleague Joe to talk about what Secure Cloud Express is.
Thanks, Karel. So what we want to do is we want to take these assessments and we want to make them actionable. So if they're subjective at the moment and they're based on interviews with people, processes that have been mapped, but not really gathering what I'd say is solid, actionable insights across an organization, particularly from a security perspective, then is there really tangible value being delivered to that client that they can actually take some tangible steps to action? And I think what we've tried to do here is take some technology and layer that into these assessments. So we're in a situation now where we're able to plug some technology in, connect that technology through all of the different cloud environments that client has, and within a matter of hours, it's going to come back and it's going to provide all of the vulnerabilities in those cloud environments. Now, the reason why that should happen in production as opposed to test is that if it's in a test environment within that client, the data in there may not be particularly useful. There may not be much data in that test environment. So the key thing here is that as part of these assessments, we need to be connecting this technology element to the client's production cloud environments. And that is usually going to get a fairly predictable reaction when you first propose that to a client of absolutely no chance you're touching our production environments with an unproven, unvetted technology. That's a no. So there are some reasons why we can convert that into a yes. The technology that we're using here, the Wiz technology, is agentless. You do not need to install anything into the client production environments. The technology here is read-only. So it's not going to have any write access whatsoever to the production environments. There is no footprint. So by connecting this technology to the client cloud environments, it's not creating a footprint, it's not using any resources. And I think almost most importantly is if this is an Accenture run assessment, the technology provider, us, are completely hands-off. We have no access to that environment whatsoever, no access to the tenant. It's all Accenture that's doing that. So it keeps it very, very clear, very, very simple and incredibly low risk. And suddenly the client dialogue turns from absolutely no chance that you're ever touching our production environment to, well, okay, well, there are very few reasons now that we originally had to stop you from doing that. And so rather than reading off a bunch of slides, I thought I'd tell you a couple of stories, real client stories, where we actually delivered real tangible value that the client acted on and what that led to. So, so client one, and I obviously not going to use any names at all. Client one was a large G2K based in the US. We went into that client, we suggested that they would benefit from this type of assessment. And we connected, or Accenture rather, connected the Wiz technology into 3 of their clouds. I think the clouds were AWS, Azure, and OCI. Within a matter of, I think, sort of 3 or 4 hours, the telemetry started coming into the Wiz platform. By the end of the first 3 days, we had identified 15 million vulnerabilities across those 3 cloud environments. The way that Wiz then takes that is because it's a single platform that's looking across all of these cloud environments, as opposed to multiple security tools plugged into each vertical security silo, one for CSPM on AWS, one for DSPM on Azure, et cetera, Wiz is a single platform that has complete visibility across all of that. And with that brings an enormous amount of context. And context enables you to take 15 million vulnerabilities in this case and turn that into 11,000 issues. And an issue is a combination of those vulnerabilities that creates an issue. And we're then able to prioritize those issues based on how severe they are. And we were able to take that 11,000 and say, well, 9,000 of those are medium severity. 350 or so of those, the numbers are there, I'm pretty sure I'm close, 350 or so of those are high severity. They need action taking on them. And 16 of those, keep me honest, 16 of those are critical, as in, very, very, very urgent, requires immediate action, and is exposing your company to some fairly scary consequences if not. Now, this client thought that they had security nailed tight because they'd bought these specific technologies that are brilliant technologies, and they provide incredible insights into the vertical that they're plugged into. But what was lacking, and why we found all of these extra ones, is that single sort of centralized view of all of those vulnerabilities and issues. Now, that was the first week. It was a 5-week assessment in this case, because the client kept saying, well, how do we remediate? How do we take these 16 criticals and fix them? Which developers introduce those vulnerabilities? How do we find out who they are? How do we take this to them in an actionable way, and preferably without increasing their cognitive load? And so we worked through this with them as a partnership, and we were able to actually remediate those as part of the assessment. So they didn't buy the technology, they didn't implement it. Just as part of this assessment, we delivered real, tangible, actionable value that the client then took and remediated those critical issues with. We presented that to the board. And then we didn't hear anything from them for a week and a half, which was uncomfortable. I've had first dates where I've maybe waited 2 or 3 days to get a response to a text message, and that was nerve-wracking. Waiting a week and a half and hearing absolutely nothing from this client we'd invested so much in was terrifying. Turns out they'd gone into denial, and that week and a half was them going through, I think, is there 7 stages of denial? Going through some of those stages of, this can't possibly be true. This cannot be the case. We've invested so much in technology. We're world leading in terms of that technology and how we implement it and how we action on it. So this can't be true. When validated that it was true, because we started to remediate and then validate that remediation, the client switched into, we need this. We need to implement not just the technology, but the whole process of remediation, which they then found was quite challenging. Client 2, this one only happened like 3 weeks ago, but it's a really good one. So this one's a European one, very, very complex, operating on all 3 main clouds, touching on critical infrastructure as part of their business, defense. That was an interesting let's touch your production conversation. We convinced them that there was no risk. They said, okay. First week, Accenture connects Wiz to all 3 production clouds. I think on the Friday, we came back to the client and we said, oh dear, you have 200 critical issues. A lot of it touching that area of the business you don't want it touching. We need to help you right now. We're going to help you right now. Here's all the data you need. Go and remediate. Have a nice weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Monday, they come back, almost with their tails wagging. It was incredible. They came back and said, we're down to 100. We've cut our criticals in half in a weekend. We were like, damn, okay, that's really good. It's kind of proving that remediation is easy though, which is not what we want, right? Because we want to be able to help them over a long time to stay at 0 criticals, which is the overall goal of these assessments. Let's get them to 0 criticals. 3 days later, they're back up to 300 critical issues. So their remediation was, let's go and switch a bunch of stuff off. Let's go and do some fire drills with our development teams, and let's get them to push updates into production again. And that process took a few days and resulted in them doubling the amount of reintroducing those critical issues. That's not to mention the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of high issues that they had. So we identified that they also have a DevSecOps problem. Like, how are they developing new code? How are they validating that before they put it into production? To know that they're not reintroducing or introducing new vulnerabilities. And this clearly showed that that client was. So fast forward, a couple of weeks later, we go and present to the board of this company. We walked into the room, and this is one of my favorite quotes of my 23-year career from any client. We walked into the room, the client said, you have some audacity. And we're like, oh dear, okay. Is that why? And the client said, you walk into my house, you switch the lights on, I can see that I'm surrounded by monsters and demons, and then you switch the lights back off and leave. I still know I'm surrounded by monsters and demons. I just can't see them anymore. Help. We're in the process of agreeing with that client how we're going to help them. But we absolutely can help them. And it's not because Wiz is a great technology at all. It's part of it. But it's about how we take that visibility and that context that that visibility provides, prioritize the issues that they actually have into ones that they actually need to act on, and then help them with a remediation strategy to get them to the 0 critical club, as we call it, but then keep them there once you're there, so that we need to then start thinking about something else. And I'll hand to you. You know this better than I do. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. Okay, so I think there were, in my mind, 3 themes in what Joe presented with those examples where we've already delivered this together with Wiz. And I usually get a question asked, like, hey, this is great technology. Why do we need Accenture? I typically say that there's 3 things. One is what I call change management, which is, okay, so you have a great technology. Are you using it to get the maximum value? I had a conversation with a colleague just recently. He's working on one of our clients. And he's like, oh, they have this. I use it every day. I look at the vulnerabilities. I use it to help them. I use it to remediate. My question back to him was, that's great. Who else in the company is using it? And he's like, well, started scratching his head. I don't know. I'm like, you see, that's the problem. It's not about a single individual. It's about the process, the system. How do you help our clients, how you have the companies to scale it out in their environment so it becomes everyone's daily tool, ideally without draining them too much or increasing their cognitive load. There's this philosophy that I have, which is more for the shift left, where security should be really invisible for the engineers. It should be there. It should be something that they use in their day-to-day life, but they shouldn't really even learn that there is a security tool. They shouldn't even like know what CVE is and some of the sort of technical security jargon. All they need is the security tools to be there and provide them the feedback that they need. Another interesting story, and this is basically the DevSecOps story that I keep talking for last few years with our clients about, is that we as security people, nowadays it's a little bit better, but historically we went back to the engineers, we used our security scanning tools or otherwise, and we came back with this huge report of these are all the things, Mr. Engineer, that you've done wrong with your code. You're basically telling them that their baby is ugly, right? And of course, I talked about the human aspect of this. The human reaction to this is, I don't want to listen to the security people. Well, when they do, and when they look at the report, typically half, maybe even more. I've seen cases where it was like 80-90% of the findings that are like, yeah, this is not real. This is in a library that we're not using. This is in our test folder. We're not using it. Or this here you don't understand the architecture because we are protected against this. I don't need to spend time on this. And it's all part of what we talk about as a DevSecOps story. How do we democratize security, enable everyone in the company to basically be a security person, even though they are not security professionals. The role of security professionals in this game is to enable everyone else in the company, in my view. So that's the shift left change management culture. The other thing that Accenture, where Accenture plays an important role, is the remediation. Joe talked about it quite a lot, but this is, again, one of my responses to the question, why do we need you, is we can help your engineers with the remediation. We won't go and change a code under someone's hands. We can help them to understand this is how you can do it, these are the options, and so on. So remediation is a big topic. And the last point out of those 3 points is again something that Joe talked about. We are talking here, and that nice example with they went to 100, then they went to 300, and you can play this what I call a whack-a-mole game with the engineers forever. Security is not something that you do once over a weekend or otherwise, and it's done. It never changes, right? It is constantly evolving. If it is not engineers pushing new things to production, it is new threats evolving on the market. It is a continuous effort. And again, the consulting aspect of this is how do we get to help the client to get to a position where it is not we scan, we find vulnerabilities, we remediate, and we start all over, but we look at how do we not introduce the vulnerabilities there in the first place. I keep saying I'm pretty much working myself out of a job, but I keep saying that ultimately I would love the security tools and the security checks to be there to say, yeah, nothing found, you're fine, go to production. Unfortunately, well, fortunately for me, it will take a while before it happens. So I think those are the three key areas that I wanted to point out, where the combination that we're talking here about, the WIS platform and the Accenture services, work really well together and can really help clients with tangible, actionable, data-driven decisions. Right. So just to sum it up, to leave some time for your questions, is Joe mentioned this. We see a lot of clients investing in a lot of technologies. These technologies are brilliant in what they do. Don't get me wrong. It can be things about securing your code, all the static testing, dynamic testing. It can be cloud, either configuration scanning or infrastructure as code. It can be tools looking at vulnerability management. It can be even tools for more operational monitoring, and so on. So we talk about vertical tools which live a little bit in a silo. And one of the very frequent conversations that I have with our clients is, well, especially from the security side, we need to have a view of where our security posture is all across. And that's where we talk about horizontal security, like having an understanding of across the whole technological estate where we are. And this is not only cloud, this can be on-prem, this can be all the AI pipelines, all the data. It is a massive ecosystem. And being able to look at this, what we call horizontally, is really important. And again, with the WIS platform, we can do it. So basically, what I talked quite a lot here about the aspect of helping to remediate vulnerabilities. I didn't mention two things that I would like to mention here. One is a cost aspect. So I just said that there's plethora of tools, and I named just some examples that you can potentially replace and get some cost savings with platforms like WIS. The other aspect is, I have not really mentioned risk here too much, but basically why are we doing all of this that we talked about? Why are we doing all the scanning? Why are we doing all the remediation? Is to manage the business risks. I a little bit mentioned that at the beginning. And the key thing to risk is you need to be able to understand the risk and quantify the risk. To back to my Google Maps example. Otherwise, you can't do too much with the risk. And I usually, also back to the remediation piece, I like to say, understanding the risk is great, scanning is great, but it's just half of the story. Until you actually remediate, then you still have the risk, right? And the other thing that I've mentioned is that the loop back of how do we change this so that the risk or the position stays, well, it never stays the same, but stays in a way where there's no zero critical, no critical, so the zero critical club. All right. I think that's it for our presentation. And we have about, 6-7 minutes for questions? Oh, how do we do that? Do I read it out?
Oh, this is a good one. I like the bottom one.
Shall I start from the bottom one? Is it realistic to have zero security issues? That is what is the acceptable limit number? You're taking that one?
I'll take that one. And I don't know what the current exact percentage is, but across all WIS clients globally, I believe 40 to 50% of them maintain zero critical issues. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you. I see some that I would like to take. So I'll start from the top one. What are your experiences with AI-written security documentation and reports? Actually, I did not mention it, but as part of Secure Cloud Express, we already use GenAI to help us write the report. So the experience is, it's not a rocket science what I will tell you, but basically AI can help. So you've seen on the slide that the client had 15 million findings. Imagine there is a security analyst writing a report going through 15 million findings. No way, right? So we already use AI to help us write a report, prepare a report, put in remediation recommendations from all the available data sources. It is a great tool. But of course, same as everywhere, it needs to be looked at by someone experienced saying, you know what, this one, I think the AI is hallucinating a bit. Same as everywhere, you probably heard this today quite a lot. It is a great tool, great augment, but it is not working on its own. Okay. What are the typical reasons a company decides for security assessment? Oh, I had that prepared in my talk track and didn't talk about it. Multiple reasons. A, they want to understand where they are. They just simply, someone says, or maybe there is a new lead who says, I need to understand where I am. One of the reasons. Another reason, mergers and acquisitions. I've been working recently with a client where there was a merger with another company, and the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer of the new company, has issued an RFP saying, I need to understand where we are across both companies. Very simple. Another reason, regulation. I didn't mention on purpose regulation today, but there's a lot of regulations, new is coming out, the more recent ones, NIS2, for example, something that our clients come to us and ask us, can you please help us understand where we are? So there's quite a lot of reasons why you would look at an assessment. Right. Which one, Joe, would be for you?
So caveat, I am not a technical resource in Wiz. But I mentioned it in the presentation. Wiz as a technology is able to connect to those cloud environments and pull all of those vulnerabilities. 15 million isn't helpful, as we've already established. Wiz, because it brings all of those in, has the ability to apply a huge amount of context. So think of Wiz as effectively mapping out all of the connectivity tissue across all of those cloud environments. And because of that, it's able to see what we call sort of critical attack paths. So whereas a vulnerability in its own right, maybe VM has elevated permissions or access to an external website, that in itself may not be a particularly significant thing. But if Wiz is able to connect that all the way back to other elements within that attack path that make it so that external actor could potentially come all the way in, move laterally, gain access to secrets and sensitive data, then those elements all put together, which may be a combination of 10, 15, 20 individual vulnerabilities, becomes a critical issue in Wiz. And it's that context within Wiz that's native within the technology that takes all of those 15 million vulnerabilities and says, well, actually, there are only 16 that are critical because of all of these reasons. And we have this wonderful thing called the graph within the platform that visualizes all of that for you. So you can click on one of those 16 critical issues and you can see visually immediately exactly why it's a critical issue, down to incredibly granular detail, and visualize that entire attack path into the organization. And so in that respect, there are very few false positives, false negatives. What we see at clients is sometimes the people aspect of that, so Accenture being incredibly close to a client and understanding very, very detailed the cloud environments that client has, Accenture may know that actually this type of issue within AWS should be classed as critical for this client for following reasons. And where that happens, Accenture are able to build policies within the Wiz platform that say, if we see this, we class that as critical based on the knowledge we have of the client, whereas Wiz may have originally said, we don't think that's critical. So it's always important to be able to customize a platform, and the way we do that in Wiz is by creating those custom policies for things that Wiz wouldn't typically have picked up, that are very unique potentially to an individual client.
Thank you. There's a few more questions. I think we don't have enough time, but thank you everyone for the questions. They're great. How does this integrate to the cloud environment? API. That's quite technical, but actually you give this, Joe mentioned it, read-only access to the cloud environment, and basically the VIS platform then uses that account to tap into the cloud and reads out all the data. So I wouldn't say it's API. But there was one question that I wanted to talk about. Are you suggesting that from now on, each company using tech and digital has to employ security officer, like they have accounting person department, have also security person and department? My view on this is a little bit different. I would really like the people in those departments, even accounting, to understand that security is also their responsibility. Again, back to my previous example, if you have in the accounting 10 people and you put there one security person, that security person probably won't be able to do everything. The path these days really to success, to really securing environment and companies is, in my view, enabling. So it's security's role to enable everyone and give them the right tools that allow them to do their job, but do it securely. Thank you.
One last interesting comment, because I love to bend rules and ignore time up messages in front of me. 55% of all of the users across Wiz clients globally are not security. 55%, more than half of all of our users globally across all of our clients are not security. They are typically developers. Interesting stat.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone.